And welcome back. So today I wanted to talk about a spooky movie that I thought would be great to share with everyone. It's getting nearer and nearer into October, and I thought, what better time to talk about scarecrows, right? Like that's pretty cool. Everyone knows what scarecrows are. They're meant to spook off the crows, the birds. You put them in your garden to protect your vegetables and your fruits. And normally, around this time of year in autumn, we use them as home decor or whatever. And so we recognize it very much through that. So the movie I wanted to watch is called The Dark Night of the Scarecrow and came out in 1981. I know what you're thinking. Oh, it was made decades ago. Oh, it's not going to be any good. So I would very much like to say that that's not good to have that mindset. Some of my favorite horror films are decades old. Some of the best horror movies, in my opinion, just to name a few, The Thing and American Werewolf in London, Suspiria, Society. Man, there's so many to list. Not all of them, but a lot of movies that, a lot of horror movies, scary movies that are very oversaturated in ads. Not all of them can be they blend together. They can be overwhelming with CGI. The acting even falls short to me, in my opinion. So this movie is pretty brutal and gory with how the characters are murdered, and yes, we have heard and seen of this before, but have we seen this with bloodthirsty, coming-to-life machinery? And so that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this somewhat underground horror film. It falls under the horror monster genre, and was actually made for television at first. First premiered on the local channel of CBS, I'm sure you guys have all heard of. It is a pretty large family network that's been around for a very, very long time. So this movie can be a little touchy on sensitive subjects, so viewer discretion is advised. This is a story about a megalomaniac small-town postman who just might be a pedo, who is so full of downright meanness that he actually harasses and bullies a handicapped man whose best friend is a 10-year-old girl. It results in some pretty gruesome, grisly deaths and murders revolving around a scarecrow and the local rednecks. CBS was airing something on a family network that had very strong subject matter, which is pretty crazy to me. Nothing like that would fly nowadays. There were no other movies really alluring into the idea of scarecrows before this movie came out. This movie basically pioneered the idea of scarecrows and some spookiness added to them, which you would think is kind of obvious to do, but they were the first, and after many years, it started becoming a very common thing you see in scary movies. And another thing that I do like about this movie, which is pretty cool of a fun fact, that the writer of this film, he actually couldn't get anyone to even accept his script. A lot of producers and networks were turning down his movie. And eventually it got to the point where he went to CBS and they actually were like, yeah, this is great, we're going to go ahead and air it. So there it was. It aired on October 24th of 1981, and I'm sure a lot of you guys maybe even remember it from your childhood. This movie is definitely worth the check out if you're into horror. So the movie begins with Bubba, played by Larry Drake, a mentally handicapped man who is very gentle and kind-hearted, is with his best friend, a 10-year-old girl named Mary Lee, who is played by Tonya Crow, are having fun on a beautiful day picking flowers and singing songs out in the open meadow.
Okay. Find me another.
When the local postman, Otis, played by Charles Durning, is showing to be a spying creep on the pair and is disgusted by this. He leaves and makes his way through the area and stops by a townsfolk worker shredding wood, Hairless Hawker, played by Lane Smith, who Otis tells that he noticed Bubba and the little Miss Mary Lee out together again.
He's out there again.
Hawker jumps to the point that he's liable to do something bad and hurt Mary Lee if they don't put a stop to it right now.
You know what he's liable to do?
Yes.
Well, let's get down there and break it up then.
Now, what good would it do?
Otis explains that Bubba is too dumb and is like a weed that just keeps coming back, and it won't do any good.
Just you wait and see. When I get through with him...
You're wasting your time. He's an idiot. He can't remember. You ought to know that by now.
What do we do then?
Nothing.
Nothing. Wait a minute. I don't understand this. It was your idea he's dangerous in the first place.
Otis is a man who is basically a bully and has put it in many of the locals' heads that Bubba is a potentially dangerous man. He doesn't like Bubba hanging around the young Mary Lee. He also tells Hawker that the only way for him to go away for good is for it to be permanent.
Spray and spray to get rid of, but always keep coming back. No. Something's got to be done. It has to be permanent.
Trouble would indeed soon happen when Mary Lee jokingly sneaks into the neighbor's fenced garden to look at a fountain, and Bubba desperately telling her not to go in.
Okay, you stay here. I'll go by myself.
Mary Lee viciously gets attacked by a guard dog that ultimately leads Bubba to panic, grabs Mary Lee and runs to Mrs. Williams' house, where she answers the door to find her daughter laying lifeless in Bubba's arms.
Bubba didn't do it! Otis?
Otis's suspicions seem to have become fruitful when he finds out from Hawker that Mary Lee had been killed while she was out with Bubba and gets riled up about the situation.
She's dead, Otis. The sheriff's calling for volunteers. Everybody's going to meet over at the courthouse.
No. We'll do this ourselves. Let's get the dogs and the guns.
Word then gets out, and Otis rallies his posse with their dogs and guns to hunt down the man like an animal.
All right, let's go.
Despite Bubba saying Bubba didn't do it, Bubba, terrified, runs back to his home where he lives with his mom, where she assures him that they won't hurt him and tells him to play the hiding game like they did last time.
I know, sweetheart. You're a good boy. Now, nobody's gonna hurt you. You hear? Now, you remember what we did the last time. We played a game, the hiding game, remember?
The hiding game. I remember the hiding. I can play it. Good, Mom. Play the hiding game. Here, we got him.
Quiet, let me handle it.
Hunting down Bubba's scent, the men arrive at Mrs. Ritter's home, to whom answers the door and is very unhappy.
What are you men doing on my property? I asked you
Mrs.
what
Ritter,
you're doing.
played by Jocelyn Brando, is well known to not like these men because they're always tormenting poor Bubba when he hasn't done anything wrong.
You are the only thing official you ever done is lick stamps. Now get off my place. You're just out here to torment him again. What's he supposed to have done?
She stands up for her son and accurately points out that they are trespassers and they aren't the law. They have no right to arrest Bubba and immediately demands them to leave.
Especially a child. Don't you understand? He loves children. He plays with them because he's no older than them in his head.
Dogs say different.
I ain't seen him.
We'll tear this place apart if we have to.
Over my dead body.
I'm warning you. You're obstructing justice.
And you ain't the law.
You're obstructing justice and aiding a fugitive.
And you're trespassing, and this is my property. And you just get the hell off.
We got dogs.
The men continue to track down Bubba, following the hound dogs to an open cornfield where they are led up to a scarecrow, with Bubba inside as a disguise. Otis doesn't notice at first, but when he takes a closer look at the scarecrow, he can visibly see Bubba's eyes through the holes of the sack. He then stands back, and the men all unmercifully unload rounds of shots into the scarecrow, killing Bubba inside. Immediately afterward, it's revealed that Bubba was actually saving the girl from the vicious dog attack.
Hey, where you at?
We're out here at the Ritter place.
What are you doing out there? They called everything off a half hour ago. Hadn't you heard? Little girl's all right. It's all a mistake. Hank Renfro's dog jumped her. They've already released her from the clinic, sent her home. Funny part is, old Bubba saved her life.
So the men, and more importantly, Otis, try to cover up to the heinous act. Then, what do you know? The wind then begins to blow viciously as if the earth itself is disturbed by what just happened.
Objection, Your Honor.
After the brutal killing of Bubba, Otis and his men are put up in an intense trial for the murder of the innocent man. The defense attorney, Sam Willock, played by Tom Taylor, fights justice for Bubba, who puts up a compelling battle in court to convict the men who unjustly killed him.
I almost forgot. He had a pitchfork against 4 men with guns. He might as well have had a feather duster against that firing squad.
Otis lies and testifies that he and the men were only protecting themselves in self-defense from Bubba.
We did everything we possibly could not to hurt him. We had to defend ourselves.
Defend yourselves? The man had 21 bullet wounds in him.
Objection, Your Honor. Sam, I'll tell you the truth.
Unfortunately, the judge is unshooked by the evidence shown to him to convict the men, so they are ultimately found not guilty and let go.
With no legal right, they...
Sam, you have produced no witnesses. You have produced no evidence. You have not shown me one thing to prove that what happened is any different than what they say. After reviewing the evidence and testimony in this hearing, I find it insufficient to establish probable cause, and I'm ordering the defendants released from custody immediately.
Mrs. Ritter, devastated about the loss of her son and the men who killed him are let off scot-free, is in disbelief and cries at the top of her lungs that there are other justice in the world besides the law, as she is being dragged out of the courtroom.
Boy, but there's other justice in this world besides the law.
Otis and his guys walk out of the courtroom with absolute joy. Following behind them, attorney Sam Willock storms out, calling their bluff, and when he finds out the truth about Bubba, he will make sure to see them on death row.
And I promise you this. If I ever find a single shred of evidence, I'll see every one of you on death row.
So this is another reason why Otis is like the most hated character in this whole thing, is he just goes on like nothing's wrong.
Well, I was just noticing the time. It's Tuesday, and Mrs. Bunch will be having fried chicken over at the boarding house where I live.
The men then go back to their regular pathetic lives when notice of an awful wind begins to stir up outside, which also happens to wake up Mary the same night and is haunted by a disturbance outside of her room, in which she leaves and is led to Bubba's house thinking he is still alive.
Baba? Baba, you asleep?
She creeps into the home completely unaware of Bubba's condition and happens to run into Mrs. Ritter in her own home.
What on earth?
Mrs. Ritter takes Mary Lee aside and explains that Bubba is gone and won't be coming back.
Where?
Well, where they can't hurt him no more.
Well, when is he coming back?
He's not, sweetheart.
Never? I've got to find him, Mrs. Ritter. He was just learning to tie a bow knot in his shoelaces.
Oh, dear.
Don't cry, Mrs. Ritter. I'll help you find him. Really. I know all the places he likes to go, where he hides. Come on, I'll show you. I'll show you.
Mary Lee!
Come on.
Mary Lee, wait, child!
Mary Lee runs out to the Scarecrow out in the middle of the field while Mrs. Ritter chases her down.
Mary Lee!
And she sits and sings a song and explains that Bubba is not in fact dead. He's just playing the hiding game.
Don't worry, Mrs. Ritter. Bubba's not gone. He's just being silly. Don't you know what he's doing? He's playing the hiding game.
Some more mystery swirls in one day when Hawker is brought to the attention of a Scarecrow out in his field.
I said we started planting.
What's the matter with you? Can't you see I'm busy? You ever see me planting this time of year?
Oh, no.
Well, why do you ask a lame-brained thing like that?
Well, I just thought it's kind of strange. I mean, if you're not planting, why would you put up a scarecrow?
Paranoid, he gets in his truck and heads to the guys at a local diner and mistakenly accuses them of playing a cruel prank on him.
Just what the hell do you think you're pulling?
What the hell are you talking about? Don't act dumb. You know damn well what I'm talking about. Putting that thing out there in my field.
What thing?
The Scarecrow. Well,
Harlan, I swear to God, we didn't do it. It wasn't us.
When Hawker finally realizes that they had no part of it, the trio immediately head to Otis.
Fellas,
Wonder if we could see you, Otis.
couldn't it wait? I think we're getting ready to have dinner.
Like, all this guy is worried about is eating food.
What the hell is this? I told you never to come over here. You know how this looks?
He's seen it, Otis.
Seeing what?
the Scarecrow, the same one. Bullet holes, everything, just like before. Except now it's filled with straw. Somebody knows, Otis.
No.
He didn't walk out there by itself.
Nobody knows.
Somebody.
Otis hears the story of the Scarecrow
course.
appearing in Hawker's field and reassures them that it was the doing of one person.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I don't understand. What is it? Who are you talking about?
Sam Willock.
The district attorney? Why?
Because he's trying to shake you. And you did just exactly what he expected. Dude, go home. You've done enough already. Just go home and keep your mouth shut. For God's sakes, don't bunch up like this. You got guilty written all over you.
So for the rest of the film, I'm actually not going to go into great detail on the account. It's just worth seeing for yourself. But let's just say, unfortunately for the men, someone isn't happy with their karma status, and they begin to reap what they sow. When one by one they each notice a scarecrow that appears in each of the man's fields that basically foretells a bad omen, resulting into each man getting slaughtered in grisly accidents. The killings are pretty brutal and are caused by a force and large machinery that seem to come to life. They are honestly just fun to watch. It is satisfying to watch each of them meet their demise. All of these men are obviously shitty, horrible people, but Otis takes up the role for the most hated person in this film for never having any remorse, being a slimeball that tries to coerce Mary Lee, and spending the rest of the film trying to cover up his crime. He also totally and completely disregards each man every time one of them come to him, scared and seeking for his help. He's just the epitome of an asshole, but his actions do eventually catch up with him. The most admirable part about the mysterious deaths is that they can be justified as a common accident, or so at first glance. That's how Otis at least tries to rationalize it as. For these killings not having any true evidence of just how the men had died, and it being a supernatural force, really meets the ironic justification for these men for wrongly killing a good person. And that was Dark Night of the Scarecrow. This is a good old-fashioned spooky movie, constantly building on the atmosphere and tension. It was shot in 17 days and was originally supposed to be 18 days, but one day was lost because of a fire. Supposedly, the movie did have a low budget, and it being shot in such a short amount of time, a little over 2 weeks, is just incredible to think about. Because the movie itself, it just has such a great storyline. It's quite short and simple, but it really just delivers. It gets to the point pretty quick, and the way that everything is just utilized, I think that it's a really, really good little spooky film, for then and now. I think the cast and crew, the actors, actresses, they did a wonderful job at doing what they were portrayed. Their character was meant to be. Charles Durning, the guy who actually played Otis, he did a lot of the stunts when later on in the movie, near the end, he starts to find himself being chased down by a machine. You can actually see that he is indeed running from a machine. There are a couple times where there is a stunt double in there. You can kind of tell because his hair is not anymore like blonde. And another cool thing is the cast and crew of the men. You wouldn't really think so, but they were wonderful, well-known, amazing actors. Played in many, many things that you guys probably know and or heard of. Larry Drake, the guy who plays Bubba, he actually starred in Tales of the Crypt and the Darkman movies. He actually also won 2 Emmy Awards for his character Benny on L.A. Law, the Old Globe, a theater company. Drake actually played the slow-witted Lenny in the play Mice of Men. I'm sure you guys have heard of that movie and are familiar with that. And that's a lot where he got his incorporation for this film, and he really stuck out. And another cool fact that I personally enjoy, Larry Drake, who plays Bubba, also voiced Pops in the television Cartoon Network series Johnny Bravo. I'm sure you guys might know about that as well. Charles Durning, the guy who plays Otis, he actually starred in Starkey's Machine, and he also played in my personal favorite, which is The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, with Dolly Parton. And if you guys haven't checked that out yet, you definitely should. It was also made in the 80s and also starred in Dick Tracy. And Claude Earl Jones, who plays Philby, was actually a character on numerous TV shows, which included T.J. Hooker, Dallas, The Dukes of Hazzard, and The Greatest American Hero, The A-Team, and many more. Robert F. Linos, or Lyons, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name, who plays Skeeter, was also a character on Simon and Simon, Falcon Crest, and The Fall Guy, Magnum P.I., and Knight Rider. Lane Smith, who plays Hairless Hawker, was in V, Amazing Stories, Red Dawn, My Cousin Vinny, and Son-in-Law. And then there's Jocelyn Brando, who plays Mrs. Ritter, which is Bubba's mother. She was actually nearing the end of her acting career when this movie came out. Her biggest role was in a movie called The Big Heat, which actually came out in 1953. I'm sure some of you may know about that. For the most part, maybe not. I've never seen it, but she was a really good actress as well, and she does a phenomenal job at being a concerned, loving mother who's fighting, and she just does a great job in this. You can feel it. Every time she's on the screen, you can feel her emotions, and it sometimes can be a tearjerker. So yeah, anyways, guys, I really do appreciate y'all watching this. I surely enjoyed going over a bit of a review. I definitely recommend this movie if you would like to watch it or haven't seen it already. Or if you have, maybe go back and check it out again, or show it to your kids or something like that. Or just, you know, anyone who hasn't seen it. I think it's a really nice little spooky movie for this time of year, and I just want to say thank you guys, and if you have any recommendations, please comment. Let me know what you guys grew up with watching, you know, what shows or movies you guys really liked. Also, please like and subscribe and turn on notifications if you wish. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful day.